It's time for some hostile therapy.
All right, this is Chanton. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, it's gonna work. Yes.
Robinson.
An inmate at Central Prison. This call will be monitored and recorded for customer assistance, collection, or complaint procedures, or thank you for using Global Tel Link.
What's up,
Hey,
Tiff?
Chanton.
Hey, Chanton.
Yeah, so we still on? Yeah, what's up, Nick? How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing today, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, sorry for I know it's only a few minutes delay, but sometimes we have problems getting through the voice recognition,
Yeah.
and it can be a bother. Yeah. So, but anyway, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you had me back.
Oh, no problem, man. No problem. Glad to have you back, man. Got, I think, quite a few interesting questions I want to ask you today, man.
All right. Sure. I'm looking forward to it. Sure.
All right. You ready to start off?
I am.
Okay. Let me just give a brief introduction for the people that want to know who you are. This is Chanton. He is part of the Crimson Letters, Voices from Death Row, book that was made also with co-author Tessie Castillo. Read the other names that are part of the co-authors are Michael J. Braxton, Lyle May, Terry Robinson, George Wilkerson, and these are guys who are on death row, and they're writing about their experience inside of prison at the present moment. And the guy I'm talking to right now, Chanton, I'm going to talk with, and he's going to give me his perspective and how it feels to be on death row at the present moment. And with that being said, I'm going to start off with my first question, man, and just answer as honestly as you can. I think everyone wants to know, when you first heard the jury saying that you were guilty and that you were going to be sentenced to death, what was your initial feelings when you heard those words mentioned to you?
Well, I thought it was a really tough question, Nick, but I mean, it's a great question. And I think, like I said before, there are some moments in life that are so either so joyous or so traumatic that it just aren't any words to express. And that was truly a moment for me in which I was just like detached. That would be the word I would use. Like I just felt suspended from life, suspended from my spirits, like every ounce of life and essence from me just vanished, and I was just kind of stuck in this moment. Like wow, like I didn't know we had a sense. I had seen movies before of death row, and I guess through secondhand knowledge, I had heard of death row, but I never knew that it was a real thing. I certainly didn't know that it was an existing thing in our own state, in North Carolina. And I didn't find out that I was actually being tried for death, for the capital murder and death penalty until my trial.
Mm-hmm.
It was right just before my trial, about 3 days before my trial. They mentioned capital murder, and they mentioned the consequences, which would be the death penalty. And I was still confused about death penalty meant that you went to prison and stayed until the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that entailed state-sanctioned executions. And when the jury found me guilty, that was the moment for me where I became detached. Honestly, by the time I got into my sentencing phase and they said death row, I was still so removed from the guilt and innocence phase. I couldn't believe I had been found guilty for a crime in which I had no involvement. And I was just kind of stuck in this moment like, why are these people hearing me or hearing that I didn't do this, I didn't have any involvement? So the sentencing phase was this numbness. I was really detached, but it came from the sentencing phase when they found me guilty. And it's just like this suspension of breath, man. Like we breathe, especially here on death row. I've been breathing for 20 years, but I haven't been living, and the breathing is so sequential. It's like I don't recognize, I don't realize, I don't remember the last time I actually sat until I started meditating, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it just recently I rediscovered that essence of living, and it took me almost 20 years because there was this real separation from myself totally when I was found guilty.
That's deep, man. Because I know I've had this conversation with people, just like a regular question, like, would you want to know the date that you may leave this earth? And, you know, or I don't know how to respond to that, because I don't know if I would be able to enjoy life after that, knowing there's a certain time, or because I may know, then I may appreciate life even more because of that. But I say that, but if that would really happen, I don't know how I really would react to that. And it's something to hear you be able to express how you feel. You say you felt numb, you felt detached. I would probably feel the same way, regardless if it's supposed to happen 10, 20 years from now. I probably feel the same way.
Well, certainly there is a part of me that's still trying to find myself, because I am 20 years mature, more mature than I was when I came here. I am 20 years more experienced. And a lot of those were in experience of hardship. I mean, executions and suicides. So there is a part of me that still does not recognize who I am today, because I'm certainly not the same person that I came in here as. And even now when I talk to family and friends over the phone, a lot of times they can only remember the person that I was.
Right.
They've yet to kind of grow into the person that I've become. And so a lot of their dialogue with me over the phone is just kind of indicative to the person that they knew. And I just see this totally different person, someone who I'm still detached from today. So sure.
Well, speaking of that word detached, this brings up a important question I want to ask you. I know for the prison system, what they try to do is try to, especially here in the States, is try to dehumanize you and give you a number, prison number, and that's what represents you for the rest of your time in prison. And the question I want to ask you is, how does it feel to have someone call you, whether your friends, family, or just anybody, call you by your given name or your nickname? Does that like give you a sense of, hey, I'm still here, I'm still a person? When someone calls you by your name, someone calls you Chanton, how does that make you feel?
This feeling of just being reinvented. Like I had lost that sense of myself for so long. No one here knows me on death row.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that sense of familiarity was just long gone. And to have people that I can call and they kind of mention me by my nickname that I haven't been called in so long. So in the street I was known as this guy Duck. Like that's just so I would say that now looking back, I did strive for this false sense of reputation, this notoriety in the streets. It was all fostered through a lot of poor choices and bad behaviors. And in the end result, it did kind of leave this reputation, but it's a reputation with a stain. Mm-hmm. And so when I do hear people say this guy Duck, like sometimes I hear some of the things that they remember, and I'm just like, wow, was that really me? And so, but it does feel warm. It's a warming feeling to just have people who do know me, as opposed to people here that I've spent 20 years, because it can easily be conceived that after 20 years of doing time alongside a person, I know a lot of these guys better than I know my own family and better than I know my own friends. And so it's just kind of this reinvention when I talk to people, and then they bring up old times and I bring up old times. I try to insert little increments or little measures here and there to kind of assert who I am today, so that they can kind of refashion their sense of who I have become. But for them, it's still a hard notion, because they still don't know me. All they know is the person who I was. But it is a very warming feeling to talk to people who know my personality, know some of my flaws and my faults and struggles, and does still know me by my nickname.
Okay. Can you tell me how your first night was on death row, inside of death row? How was your first night experience?
Man, Nick, it's like I was just living this. So I mean, I'm not. So I try not. I always try not to be cliche, use cliches, but in this regard, like I really felt like I was just living this nightmare. Like I was just walking around, just waiting for it to end. And at every given turn, I would just think it'll be over in a minute. Just hang on, it'll be over. And it just, my over never came. And I was just walking around. There was guys who had kind of made this effort to make my first day on death row a little more leisure and inconvenient than you would normally for a person who just walked on the death row. So there were guys that offered me cigarettes and offered me commissary, and their gestures and their invitations felt warm. It felt endearing. So it didn't feel like there was any kind of suspicious activity. I mean, naturally, I'd been in prison before, so that was my immediate reaction. But their response was just, it felt warm and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helped to alleviate some of the struggles that I was going through, because here were these guys that had been doing this for 10 years or more. And they had put their hardships aside momentarily to attend to me and my concerns and my needs. So that was, in a sense, it was a great help at the moment. But then when I went inside the cell that night and I hit this sack, I was just like, if this is real, please, God, if there is a God and you do love all your children the same, and we are all children of God, then please don't let me wake up, because I didn't want to live my life this way.
Are you okay? Are you religious now, or do you still believe in God?
I do. So over the years, I've become an eclectic. Like there is
Okay.
just these variety of truths in almost every aspect of culture and religion that I just adhere to. I think that there's a moral conduct in which we should strive for, and that no one religious structure should have a final say in that. And I think that's this joint effort in all aspects of life that is designed to teach us. But my roots is definitely Christianity. And today I'm a practicing Rastafarian.
Okay.
But I have been a Muslim. I have been a Muslim before. I took my Shahada in 1996, and I have been under the tutelage of a guy who was a 5%er, and he had some very interesting things to say. I've studied Buddhism, and just anything that I can get my hands on. I try to deem myself a free thinker. Like if it feels right spiritually, then I try to adhere to it. Anything that's morally sound, you know.
Yeah, you sound more spiritual than I would say religious. Religious seems a little bit more confined to one sect of a religion. You sound more spiritual, which kind of combines other aspects or rules of religions. Would that be correct to think that you're more spiritual than anything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, Nick. In fact, yeah, that's why I always say that I'm more spiritually inclined than religious.
Okay. Did you ever have? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, I was gonna say, did you ever have a moment, when you were sentenced and inside, a moment where you just cursed at God, and it's like, why would you do this to me? If you're real, if you really love me, did you ever have one of those moments like you're like, I'm just turning my back against any type of religion, any organized religion, or just God, period? Did you have a moment like that at any point?
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Honestly, I did, but it wasn't during my first stint. Unfortunately, this is my second time being wrongfully convicted. And the first time, it was for, ironically, I ended up signing a plea bargain in that crime, but still to this day, I maintain my innocence because I did no wrong, and I had no culpability. But that charge was a little more just mentally corroded.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
It corroded every good thing in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we only have 30 seconds. Nick. You mind when we call back?
Yeah, that's fine, man.
All right.
This is a Global Tel Link prepaid call from
Terry Robinson.
an inmate at Central Prison. This call will be monitored and recorded. For customer assistance, collection, or complaint procedures, or to block future calls, dial 1-866. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
On this.
All right, we're back on, man.
All right. Yeah. So to answer your question, Nick, yes. During this, it wasn't my first stint, but it was actually my second stint in prison. It started with me one day just cutting grass. Like I was just sitting on the riding lawnmower cutting grass, and next thing I know, I got a phone call, and my life just changed. The mother of my daughter was on the phone. She was making all kinds of. She didn't really make accusations. She just was really belligerent and screaming, and it led to a call to the police on my behalf that resulted in this accusation of. I never really fully understood what the accusation, to my understanding, was child molestation. It ended up being dropped. There was no evidence of that whatsoever. And it ended up being dropped to like child abuse, but still, there was no degree of no level or degree which the charge could have been dropped. It still would have justified any wrongdoing because I had no involvement whatsoever. And so, because of the circumstance, I had an attorney who I didn't know at the time was more. He was my attorney, but he worked for the state.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to trial. He said that I would be facing 20 years. He was optimistic on the one hand. He said that I think that I can win it. He was also pessimistic on the other. Said if I don't, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Then they gave me this really. To me, I thought it was a child. I thought it was an insult, but it was just this way out. A 3-year sentencing plea on the Fair Sentencing Act. And it's like I'll virtually go to prison, serve a year or so, and then be back home. And what I didn't realize is that my torture began so I went through something during that year, and I did curse God, and my behavior really reflected it. Like I was a terror. I did everything that I could to reflect the pain, and I was doing things that was uncharacteristic of myself, things that I'm not proud of today. But I was a living product of this wrong that had been done to me, and I thought that okay, when this sentence is over and I get out, it would be over. But little did I know that my condemnation had just begun, because I was yet to pay for that crime. It was society that would make me pay for that crime, more harsh and more intense than those 2 years in prison ever would. And so I continued that mindset when I got out. I was just like this walking time bomb. I was just walking around so self-destructive because of how I'd been unjustifiably treated. And so during that time, yeah, Nick, there was this time when like I thought that there was a God. He just wasn't for me. That God loved some people and he cursed others. And who was I to love God after he hated me so much to put me in prison for something I didn't do?
Okay, that's deep, man. I understand how you could feel that way. I'm not gonna be one of these people who are like, well, I don't understand how somebody could never feel that way if they really love God. You were in a dire situation, and you felt like there was not an out. And I totally understand how you could feel that way. So I will not. I'm not going to down you for even saying something like that, because that's very understandable. The next question I want to ask you now is, when you feel like you have no one in your corner, even when it comes to religion, did you have suicidal thoughts?
Honestly, no. I've had these moments that I believe, and I can't speak for effect, but I would assume that are compatible with thoughts that a person would have before committing suicide. I think suicide is like this great, just this buildup of depression and anxiety and anguish. And for me, I would always try to suppress it with thoughts of my family, thoughts of my son, thoughts of my mother, something like that would do to her. And so for me, it never became that intense to where I actually thought of hurting myself. But there have been moments where I felt like death has to be better than my life, like being here.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that regard, I think I wrote a piece before where I was trying to just express how it feels to be non-suicidal, but in a predicament where you feel like death is better than your existing predicament.
Have you ever had to talk someone down from suicide in there?
I did.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy here so there was a time, because I've never shared in those experiences, and I never know anyone firsthand, I didn't have any experiences firsthand with suicide.
Mm-hmm. I
would think that I didn't take the signs as serious as they were. And I had a friend here. I came here on a Monday night. He came on a Tuesday night. We were friends ever since. And it's almost like we came together, even though he was from a different city,
mm-hmm.
North Carolina. And he had went through depression. I saw how he deteriorated. I saw how his behavior and his spirit is just like changed. It just diminished. He just wasn't the same. And I just didn't take to the signs. And then one day they told us to lock down. No one knew why. And the next day a guy came to me. He was like, "Are you okay?" I didn't even know what he meant. And then he said that my friend had hung himself inside of this mop closet, like this dingy, dank, dirty mop closet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last place that a person should be their final resting place.
Right.
And then suicide became real for me. And so there was another guy who had just he came from a background where it was a very productive family. They were upper class, and he had a promising future, and he got involved with drugs and lost it all. And so his behavior here didn't reflect a person who had come from this great life, this great background with all this loving and supporting family. He was into drug addiction and kind of always bumping heads with the biggest guys. And it reminded me of myself in my first thing. I said that there's a part of me that was just itching to be hurt or punished because that's how I felt inside. And so then one day I had a talk with him, and he had mentioned, he came at me with a serious approach that he just wanted to end it all. And so I sat with him for a few hours. I didn't feel when it was over that I talked him down. I just wanted to do the best that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there I just hoped and prayed that tomorrow would find he and I alive and well, and it did.
It might have helped. That on top of maybe other conversations might have added to, talking him down from what he was maybe potentially was going to do. So in the end, yeah, you might have helped him continue living inside, man.
He's still here today, and he's doing a lot better. At one time, he even started to let his health go, and like today, he is vibrant. He's very active. He talks with other guys. He's a different person today. So I was kind of glad to see him gravitate towards something more positive.
Good. Let me ask you this: what is your relationship like with your mother? I know you mentioned your mother, is one of the people you look up to, and you talk about your kids. With a mother, mothers just want to protect their kids. Loving mothers want to protect their kids, make sure they're doing good. And I would imagine for her, knowing in the situation you're in now, it's probably gut-wrenching, kind of hard for her to seeing you where you're at right now, and she can't do anything to help you. Do you have any idea how she feels with you being in prison right now? How, what's her feelings about what's going on with you right now?
I think for a long time, not even just during this particular stint in these 20 years on death row. I think when I first started engaging in criminal activity and my brother, I think my mom just been spiritually downtrodden since then. And she just worries a lot. And she comes from a background that is filled with nervousness and anxiety. And I didn't do anything to make it easier on her.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular conviction, I mean, I've come to admire her in more ways than I thought I ever could, because I've seen her day to day fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this can't be easy. I mean, she's still so like emotionally unstable about the circumstance that we rarely mention the word death row or in her presence.
Okay.
She just cringes. But she would come like week in and week out for 20 years, and it was like a commitment to her. Like it became a part of her essence, like her being. She needed to be here, and I was, on the other hand, didn't want her to be confined to this prison. I didn't want her here every week out of obligation. So I finally talked her into moving back to our hometown. But before then, she had been close to the prison for over 16 years, making sure that she was here for me in every way she could. And I would see how she would light up at the beginning of visit, and I would see a part of her just kind of wane away when it was time, when the visit was over.
Mm.
And it was just always hard for me, but it was something I wouldn't take from her, because I know that she needed in that way to be there for her son. So I admire my mom. And I know we all do, but my mom I saw her throughout my life abate situations like poverty. We lived below the poverty line, but she did. She made sure my brother and I and my sister, we didn't. So I never knew I was poor. There were times I would go to jail for mischievous acts. She would bail me out. She did somehow become an enabler, but it's not to her fault, because she is loyal to her fault, and she just doesn't know how to not be there for her children in every way possible.
That's great, man, because we all need somebody that's in our corner, man, and that's great that she's stuck by you through thick and thin up to this point still. I guess my next question now is, what is your relationship like with your kids?
So my oldest son, we have a great relationship. It started out rough, because he grew up. He was 10 years old when I came to prison, and he grew up without me. I mean, for those first 10 years, I was a constant in his life. But then afterwards, that sudden removal, it did something to him. So when we first reconnected over the phone, there was, again, this detachment between us. And it was me trying to, trying to figure out. A part of me treated him as the son that I left behind, the 10-year-old son. And a part of him was dealing with resentment. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it did come to a head. But it was the greatest thing that could happen for us, because we needed it. I needed him to be able to express what it's like not having his father there. And then afterwards, we began to kind of mend our relationship. And now he dotes over my phone calls. He's respectable, not only to myself, to others. I would hear him interact with other people while I was on the phone. He would just be kind and say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and all the things that my mom taught me and that I had tried to pass on to him that I just thought he had forgotten. And he certainly wasn't that young man when I first started talking to him. So I was proud that he was making an effort for myself. As for my daughter, our relationship is non-existent, and I've tried, but I can't make her get past her resentment. If I could take it away for her, I would, but I know it's something she has to work out, and she just doesn't seem to be capable or willing. And so that's the thing that bothers me most today, is that I miss my daughter more than anything. And if there's one thing that I could fix, one thing that I had going on in my present, in my current life,
you have 60 seconds remaining.
That is the most meaningful, it would be to repair my relationship with her. And I also have another son in New York, but he's been there since he was 3 months old. So I called him here and there, but I haven't had a chance to really be in his life and get to know him.
Is your daughter the youngest of those three there?
Yeah, she's the middle.
She's middle child.
She's the middle child.
Okay.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
I say usually daughters have a bigger affection for their fathers than the sons. Sons love their fathers differently, but than the daughters. But daughters usually have a different, deeper affection for their fathers, and sometimes it can be love can be a little bit more hurtful towards them than it does the sons. Not that you love them any less, but it's just a little different. I know we got a few more seconds left. You can just call back, man.
This call is from
Kerry Robinson.
an inmate at Central Prison. This call will be monitored and recorded for customer assistance, collection, or complaint procedures, or to block future. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hi, Tess. Yeah, I was checking to see if there's more questions from me.
Oh yeah, we're good, man. I got a few more questions for you.
All right.
You good?
All right, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. All right. We're gonna move in a little bit of a different direction. I wanted to ask you now, who do you admire most? Well, it's a two-part question. Who do you admire most inside of prison? And then the second part is, who do you admire most outside of it?
Who do I admire most inside the prison?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a really tough question. I'm turning it over in my head. There's some obvious answers, like my girl Tessie, of course, you know, saying how she came up in here and just kind of changed the narrative and challenged the norms and those type of things. And there's been some other great inspirations. There was this one psychologist here who, she was a psychologist. She knew nothing about interacting with death row and teaching us about drama, but she had took a drama class in college that she minored in.
Mm-hmm.
And when the programs were offered to us, she saw a place where she could kind of come in and interject some experiences in drama and kind of just show us something different than we were used to. And so she came in, and I would see this woman like, she didn't just come in as part of an obligation to the system and the policy. She came in and was committed to the humanity of us guys. And she was so diligent. She was so patient. And she worked with us until finally one day we put on a play. And it was before all of these different audiences and these other prison administrations, and everybody was signing on to come over to death row and just see this play. And this woman was just such a huge inspiration to me, that she was the reason why I was able to get up in front of all those people and do that, and to challenge my own fears, because I wanted to honor her and her commitment to us. But the person I would honestly, Nick, have to say that I'm probably most inspired by is this guy named Dr. Coombs, and he was the director over the programs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his vision that launched all the programs. It was his vision that allowed Tessie to come in and teach us journalism, to expose us to other elements of social development that we had been lacking on death row for so many years. And so he was such a great guy. He treated us like, when he was around, we weren't in prison anymore. It's like we was in an office building, and he was this guy with this huge position, and we would just kind of interact with one another. And he just never talked down to us as though he was a psychologist and we were inmates.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, he kind of instilled in us that element of humanity that we had been missing for so long. Because when we interact with people on death row, with nurses and officers and those type of, then there's always this repetitiveness to, and that sometimes it's not always intentional, but we're always reminded that we're just an inmate.
Mm-hmm.
And during that era when we had the programs, we weren't. We were everything but just an inmate. So I would have to say Dr. Coombs, Dr. Peter Coombs.
Okay. Do you ever go to sleep and dream about being on the outside or being free again?
I do, and it's crazy that all my dreams end up with me, because dreams are so wacky, man. It's so weird that they just have no no stability to which they reside. Like they could just kind of flip and change. And so I would have these dreams where it just be great, and my spirit would feel liberated. And I would feel free. And then suddenly, I don't know if it's just this, because maybe sometimes it could be the jingle of a key that you just kind of hear subconsciously while we're sleeping, or maybe the opening and the closing of a door. But it's always something that would just kind of shift the dream immediately back to prison. So a lot of my dreams end just before I wake up. They always end with me in prison.
Okay. But here's another quick. Have you ever heard of, you probably have, the Innocence Project?
I have.
Okay. I read something the other day that they freed, I think, like 8 people or 9 people in 2018 through DNA testing, or, evidence that just came about all of a sudden. And my question, I guess, to be to you is, what do you think could or should be done to prevent more innocent people from being locked up?
Okay, so first I want to go back to the question that you asked earlier, and it's just a really quick answer, but the person I admire most on the outside, obviously, is my mom. So I just want to say that real quick.
Okay.
So here's I think we all have an obligation to the judicial system to kind of examine it and see where there are just these elements that need to be fixed and need to be changed, so that we can ensure that there are no injustices. I mean, we're living in a time now where we just have kind of resigned ourselves to this idea that injustices and wrongful convictions are going to take place. There's nothing we can do about that, and that is so beneath who we are as an advancing people. Like, we shouldn't live in a nation where people are wrongfully convicted and we just chalk it off. And for me, during my evaluation, I've seen that there's an issue in the jury selection. There's a lot of juries that are being selected that are not competent for. I mean, not that they aren't competent people, but being a juror is a prerequisite of I mean, you have to know certain things about what's being said in court. They give you all these instructions, and for a lot of people, they may be intelligent in other places in their life, but some of these instructions just kind of go over their head. And I, for one, feel that my conviction solely lied on an incompetent jury. They just didn't know what they were hearing and know what they were doing. They were more, they believed more in the power of word of mouth than actual physical evidence. And I just thought that, in my experience, I saw that how this could lend itself to people being wrongfully convicted, because some people do not know how to separate themselves from their preconceived notions. Some people do not know how to go inside of a courtroom and be impartial, especially after they made the decision based on social, on media exposure and word of mouth around the city. And so I would hope that we would have a more diligent process in selecting jurors. I think that there should be like a jury orientation. Like, people should go to a school for maybe 3 days to learn what it is to be a juror, to learn what their obligations is inside of a court. And so, to me, I think that that's a way in which we could help to prevent wrongful convictions by better preparing our jurors for trial.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good thought. I never thought of that deep, for trying to give them like a class for juries before they go in there. Because, I mean, you think about it, anything else that involves life or death, you have to take a class, like a gun, driving a car, operating some sort of vehicle. You have to take a class for it. In jury, you just kind of show up, and they just kind of pick based on what your personality may say about you, that they may think you may be good enough for this case. So that's a good thought. I never thought about it like that. Okay. Is there anything that you should say they should abolish in prison that really is not reforming any prisoners at all, that they should just get rid of altogether?
Absolutely. And I know that this is so expected of a person who on death row, but I just don't see I see how, for me, executing people is it diminishes our own integrity and our own faith. It says that we are not capable of allowing people redemption, that we don't have the tools to allow people to be restored. And people can change, people can be redeemed, people can do something heinous and atrocious and then go on to impact other people's lives in an extremely positive way. So the guys that I've seen here that were executed, the world didn't know them like I did.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys I didn't know from the streets. I only got to know them here on death row, but I never saw a man that was deserving to die.
Okay. All right, Chanton, I'm gonna play a little game with you. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to give you these words, just one word, and I want you just to tell me how the word makes you feel. You know, you can say it in a sentence, a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, however you feel. I want you to express yourself how the word makes you feel. Okay. Okay.
All right.
The first word I got for you is love. How does love make you feel?
Obligatory, obligatory, and loyal.
Okay. Let's see. Next word is hate. How does the word hate make you feel?
Hate it makes me feel self-imposed and demeaned. I feel like I'm better than that. My mom taught me not to hate. Every form of teaching, whether it was religious, whether it was educational, just is kind of denotes or promotes against hate. So when I engage in hate, I just feel so like I feel like something going on with myself, and I feel demeaned.
Okay. Next word would be justice.
Justice, I guess the word that comes to mind is fallacy. Like I feel like justice is so it's a pipe dream. I think there are many areas in society in the judicial system where justice is served, but I also feel that justice is a way for people to kind of obscure their own flaws.
Mhm. Okay. What about the word redemption?
Redemption makes me think of faith and I guess evolution. To me, I think that is a part of um, the human element that we have evolved from just this very civil time where we only had sticks and stones to a time where a person can do wrong, accept culpability, and then pass on those experiences to teach others. So I think that redemption, to me, redemption just invokes this sense of evolution.
Okay. Last word I'm gonna give you is happiness.
So this is kind of ironic because when I think happiness, I always have thought initially of like heaven, like this place where it's just always happy. And I know for some people that varies, their vision varies. Some people think paradise, and some people think just different concepts. But I've always just envisioned this place where there is no need for justice, because justice denotes first a sense of wrongdoing, and redemption the same. But when you think happiness, it kind of just kind of burst through all of the negative connotations and just kind of leaves this idea of just smiles and warm hearts um, and and loyalty and those type of things. So for me, I just always have had this sense of heaven when I think happiness.
Okay, very nice. Last thing I want to allow you to do, man, is I want to just give you the floor for whatever time we got left and just spill out what
You have 60 seconds remaining.
what you want people to know about prisoners on the inside and who they are as people. I know we only got so many seconds left, but go ahead, man. The floor is yours.
So then I would say that people in prison are still humans, and we are not irredeemable. And it kind of defeats this idea of a penal system, a correctional facility.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
If we believe that people cannot be corrected. So I would just ask people to look within themselves, and before we're so quick to judge, and not be a slave to our notions, our preconceived notions, and to challenge themselves, and to allow other people that sense of redeemability. And I know we're short on time, Nick, but thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Chanton, man. I appreciate it.